go ahead and use our 19mm socket and remove these lug nuts. Once the lug nuts are removed, go ahead and remove the wheel, set it aside. I'm going to go ahead and remove our brake caliper by loosening and removing this 13mm bolt, and then we're going to go ahead and remove the 13mm bolt up top. Go ahead and remove those bolts and set those aside. I'm going to go ahead and use a small pry bar and work the caliper loose. I'm going to have our caliper hanger tool ready to go. I'm going to separate this unit, hook the caliper, and I'm just going to bring it up and hang it on the spring itself to hold it up and out of the way. Let's go ahead and remove our brake pads. I'm going to go ahead and remove this caliper bracket bolt here, and then the one up top here. These are both 15mm. We're going to use a 15mm socket and a breaker bar for some additional leverage to loosen these. We're going to loosen and remove the upper bolt. Hold on to the caliper bracket so it doesn't fall on you. I'm going to rotate this up. There's actually a Torx screw right here holding this to the face of the wheel hub. Let's go ahead and remove that. Using a T30 bit, I'm going to go ahead and remove this screw here. If your vehicle does not have this screw, it is not critical to the operation. Go ahead and grab the rotor, work that off, and set it aside. Using a 34mm socket, we're going to go ahead and remove the axle nut here. On the back of the wheel hub, we have an ABS sensor right here. I'm going to pop this out of the retainer to show you a little bit better what it looks like. Here's the two connectors. There's a little tab on the back side. You just lift up on that one back side there, pull the connector apart. On the back of the knuckle, there's going to be 3 bolts that hold the wheel hub. One of them is right here. This is a 13mm bolt. Then there's one on the top up here. It's a 13mm. And on the rear side over here, there's the 3rd bolt right here. Let's go ahead and loosen those. Now we're not going to remove the bolts all the way. You want to make sure that you can still see the bolt through the front of the wheel hub flange, but you don't want to have it sticking all the way out. So the bolt that we're removing comes out from the top right here, and you'll be able to see the bolt moving. You see the bolt retracting. We want to have about half of that bolt, or have that bolt halfway into that flange. So right about there is good. You can still see the bolt inside, but yet it's not completely out. We're going to do that for all 3 of these bolts. Now with all 3 of those bolts pulled out, but they're still holding the hub here, the purpose of that is that the bolts will retain the hub from shooting out onto the floor once this comes loose. We're going to go ahead and use a hammer and try and work the hub around the perimeter to get it loose from the knuckle. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses when doing a job like this. And just keep working the hub like this until you can get it separated from the knuckle. Now with the hub loose, we're going to go ahead and remove the bolts on the back of the bearing. All right, with the 3 bolts removed and you're striking it with the hammer, you want to be careful that it doesn't fly off. So it's at the point where we can work it a little bit, yet capture the hub when it comes off from the knuckle. Now, upon trying to remove the wheel hub, we did realize that our CV axle shaft here is stuck inside the splines on here. So that has to be loose in order for us to pull the hub off without pulling the axle out. So we're going to use an air hammer here or punch to go ahead and loosen this out. Now that we have that loose, we can continue pulling the wheel hub out. Remember to take into consideration the orientation of your backing plate for your brake caliper to fit back over here. So the back part of our hub actually separated with the ABS pickup and everything still in the knuckle. We just used the air chisel and kind of broke it free. Just use a pry tool to go ahead and pop the rest of this out. Now on the upper portion of the knuckle, roughly about 11 o'clock, there is a recessed or beveled area right here on the back edge of it. That's going to allow us, when we install our wheel hub for our ABS wire, to line up and go through that area. So you want to make sure when you line this up and you bring that in, that this wire fits into that notch right there. Now, installing your wheel hub and your backing plate, you want to go ahead and line this up. Take into consideration the orientation of the ABS wire, your backing plate, and where your rotor is going to be. I want to go ahead and slide this on. At the same time, we need to try and work our ABS wire through the other side where the axle is. So I just need to try and manipulate our axle while feeding our sensor wire through. Now, we did clean the components here and get some anti-seize compound on the splines. Line up the flange, the backing plate. I'm going to go ahead and run a bolt through the back side of the knuckle and just get the upper bolt started a few threads by hand. We did apply some Loctite to these threads. Feed that through. Get this one here started. And then go to the back bolt and get that one started. Now that we have all three bolts started, you're just going to double check where our ABS wire is coming out. It is coming out in our correct location. Let's go ahead and snug the hub bolts down. I'm going to go ahead and work our way around these three bolts, and we're going to tighten them down evenly. That way we can pull the hub into the knuckle nice and flush. I'm going to go ahead and torque our wheel hub bolts to 96 foot-pounds. And repeat for the other two. Now go ahead and grab your ABS harness right here. You're going to line it up with the new connector. Press that together. Now we have our retainer tab that will go onto your backing plate. Line that up, snap that on like so. Let's go ahead and install our axle nut, and we're just going to snug that down. And we're going to install a couple lug nuts here. And grab a pry bar. I'm going to go ahead and torque the axle nut down to 118 foot-pounds. Once the axle nut is torqued, go ahead and remove those lug nuts. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to push these pistons back into the caliper itself. want to push these pistons in until they're flush, just like so. Let's go ahead and grab our rotor and line this up, set that into place. Now we can go ahead and install our retaining screw for the rotor. If your vehicle does not have this, it is not critical to the operation of the braking system. This is just something that the factory uses to keep the rotor in place during the rest of its assembly. Let's go ahead and line up our caliper bracket. And then we'll install our lower bolt. Just line that up, get it started a few threads. We'll repeat for the top. Once those are in, we'll go ahead and snug those down. Let's go ahead and install our brake pads. I'm going to have our squeal tab right here on the top, and we're going to have a squeal tab on the top on the other side. Let's go ahead and line up our brake caliper. Slide that over the pads. You just want to work our slider pins in a little bit so we can get that caliper in and on. Once these line up, let's go ahead and get our bolts started. With both of those bolts started, let's go ahead and snug them down. Now I'm going to go ahead and torque our caliper slide pin bolts to 25 foot-pounds. And repeat the upper bolt. Let's go ahead and install our wheel. Get our lug nuts started here. Now that we have our lug nuts installed, let's go ahead and snug them all down. Let's go ahead and torque the wheels down to 103 foot-pounds.